Here we are. You got college football Saturday night review with Mike and Rico, and we got the Michigan fight song running. We'll cut that down. We've still got action going on. I'm looking across my way at my screen here. I've got 2020 BYU and Baylor battling. 6 minutes to go in the fourth. We're going to keep you up to date on what's going on there, but holy crap, Mike. Wow. What's one word to describe this this week two? This Saturday, week 2.
I would say chaotic, shocking. A lot of shocking games, a lot of big upsets. Just some things surprising, some things kind of, a few things we expected, but just a lot of chaos. There's so many upsets. It's hard to even. I mean, there's going to be so much changing. But welcome to college football. That's the best way to explain it to guys, because this was crazy today.
This was nuts. So we'll keep you up to date with this Baylor game. At the time of airing, which let me check my phone here. I'm 12:20 Central Time. Mike is 1:20 Eastern Time. We're bringing it to you late. This is what we're doing. Passionate about it, love it, and want to get this to everybody. We've got Baylor and BYU knotted up at 20. 6 minutes left in the fourth. BYU's got the ball, and looks like they're going to be punting back to Baylor. So we will get you all the juicy details on that matchup. But let's start with what was likely the game of the day, and one that, being in Texas, I really feel for the University of Texas and the faithful right now, because this was one I thought they outplayed Bama. I thought they caught multiple bad breaks and multiple terrible calls throughout the course of that game. And really, it just felt like one that they had a great opportunity to win. And it would have been monumental for Coach Sarkisian in that program. They ended up being on the short end of the stick. Bama came back with 10 fourth quarter points in a comeback. Bama gets a field goal late, 20-19. Bama escapes Austin, Texas with a win. Just heartbreak for the Longhorns. It feels like they've been here before. What's your initial reaction to that game, Mike?
I mean, just watching it, I can kind of feel for them, because they're still, and it kind of shows you the overall gist is that they're still figuring out how to win. You missed a 20-yard field goal. Referees missed a really bad holding call that really set up Bama to finish the job. But overall, it's just, you got to be aggressive, and you got to finish plays, and you got to finish drives, and Texas just did not do that. Obviously, losing Quint Ayers in the first half was a killer, but I think overall they did everything you could possibly hope for. Your kicker makes a 49-yard field goal but misses a 20-yarder, so you figure that out, guys. Kickers are I don't know what to say. They had a bad day, kickers all around, but I think overall just Bama showed their merit. They had a minute and 30 left. They drove all the way down there. Bryce did what he does, and then I do not understand why teams go to prevent defenses under 2 minutes, because it never helps you, because you can't stop anything, and certainly it killed Texas in the end of that game, where they just could not stop Bryce Young from getting down there and putting out. It's a heartbreaker. I mean, I feel for him. I mean, I saw the same thing when FSU lost to Notre Dame in the first game of the year. It's a killer, because I agree with you. I think they did outplay them, but at the same time, Bama just does what Bama does when when it's time to put your big boy pants on, they get the job done.
They do. They do. I mean, there's so much. I mean, we could talk for an hour about this game. It was a tremendous game. The biggest takeaway that I had was there's been a lot of talk about Texas. I know in our circle of brothers, we've had a lot of banter back and forth. And being in the state of Texas, I mean, I'm around a lot of people real close to the program, real fond of the program, and they feel like they're on the come up. They feel like they're building back up to get Texas football back where it should be. And I was impressed because I saw for 60 minutes, I saw a Texas program that popped pads with Bama. And frankly, if I had to give it a nod, I'd give it a 51-49 nod to Texas with the pad popping. I felt like they matched them on both the offensive and the defensive line. And I don't like saying the woulda, coulda, shoulda, and the what ifs and all that, but I'll be straight up frank. Quinn Ewers was 9-12, $134. in this game with a 96.3 quarterback rating before he got knocked out of a game. If he stays in this game, Texas wins, and they may win by more than a touchdown. I feel very comfortable saying that. So my takeaway is that this Texas team is a lot closer than people are going to give them credit. I know they tend to lose a lot of close games. Oklahoma's nipped them a couple times, but I was very impressed with Texas. Bama, I expect. I know what Bama does. Bama is the standard. They are the standard in college football. Georgia is the reigning champ, but Bama's the standard because Bama's there
Mm-hmm.
every year and they do it every year.
Mm-hmm.
But Texas met that standard today, and they did it in a pretty physical fashion. And I was really impressed with them. Bijan Robinson had a tough day, 2.7 yards on the ground, only 57 yards. That Bama front did a good job bottling him up. Hudson Card came in, went 14 to 22, 158. And actually, the numbers read a lot better than it looked. He missed some bad throws in the fourth quarter, but hit one to kind of set up what was looking like the winning field goal. Xavier Worthy went 5 for 97. And Bijan Robinson did a lot of work on the ground at 73 yards, 3 catches on the ground. I was impressed with how Texas was able to move the ball overall. If we look at the team stats there, just total yardage, it was really dead even. 374 for Bama, 371 for Texas. I mean, Texas had 25 first downs to Bama's 16, and Texas also had a slight advantage in the clock. I really do think Texas outplayed them in this game, but to be the man, you got to beat the man, and you got to beat the man. You can't kind of sort of beat him. You can't leave a minute 34 for the Heisman Trophy winner because Bryce is going to do what Bryce does.
Mm-hmm.
Bryce finishes with about 250 total yards and a score, but that does not do it justice. He was masterful when he had to be. Mike, what are your thoughts on Bryce Young?
Yeah, Bryce is. I've said it before. He's the best player in the country. I mean, some of the freak plays he did. One scramble where he threw it in the end zone, where he scrambled around for seemed like 2 minutes, and just find. He just understands where everyone's supposed to be, and just has a knack for the big plays. As far as Texas, I was most impressed with Texas's defensive line. I thought they handled themselves really good. We all know Alabama's offensive line is really good. They did a really good job. They gave him a lot of trouble. Bryce was constantly pressured. So Texas deserves a lot of credit, but with Bryce Young, he just does what I've seen him do ever since he's got that job. Like he just when you
See if
need
we
a
can get back
play,
online.
so when he makes a play, you need a play, he just makes it every time. Every time, and even you go back to the national championship game with Georgia. I mean, he was keeping them in that game in the national title game by himself. So says a lot about him.
Escapes Austin 20 to 19 is going to be a lot of discussion about that game. Bama because that was a game that they were right to lose. Texas gave them a valiant championship effort, comes up just short, but it's one of those situations where to win games of that magnitude, Sarkisian had his defensive coordinator call up a great corner blitz, and they got home, and the guy couldn't break down and make the play. Massive holding call missed on that play, by the way,
Hmm.
but the corner should have made the play. Break down, make the play. DBs, you can't just shoot your pads at a guy. You got to break down in that situation and make the play. You got to square up and body tackle him, and it didn't happen. And Bryce slipped it, and he was down the sideline, set up the game in the play. But that's an example of plays that, as Texas matures and grows at this level, they're going to have to make that kind of play to win that kind of game. It's what it comes down to.
And that's what concerns me about Texas with this loss. We've seen it with a lot of teams, even FSU last year. You
Mm-hmm.
lost a Notre Dame game and you fell apart and you started off 0-4. I'm just wondering if this is going to affect them to go into the rest of the season because that's a massive loss to overcome because you put so much into that game. So I'm curious to see what Texas looks like the following week because you don't it's bad enough you lose the game, but it's really bad if it affects the rest of your year. Because I think this is a very good Texas team. If I think they should get yours back in probably a week or two. Sounds like from what I saw, he had a clavicle sprain. That's usually a 2 week injury, but yeah, they can
Mm-hmm.
get him back. The defense, I'm really impressed with their defense. I wonder about the mental makeup of this team after losing a game like that.
Yeah, I agree with you. These teams tend to have a hangover. We've seen it so many times, and we'll get to another hangover game, big national magnitude. we won't even spoil alert it. We'll just get to that in a little bit. But yeah, these valiant efforts, they tend to have a hangover in the next week. So you got to be able to. This is going to be a great test for Coach Sarkisian to see if he can pick his team up and get back onto the saddle, because I think they have enough to really challenge and possibly win the Big 12. I really do. From what I saw today, if they play like that throughout the course of the year, that team can
Yeah.
win the Big 12, and they can factor back in. They can work their way back into this thing.
Yeah, I think Quinn's the big key for them. They have to have Quinn. They're like me and Rico watched the game together, and he was carving Alabama up. I think he had like 146 something yards
Mhm.
around there when he was in there. And he wasn't even it wasn't even at halftime yet, and he was just so they got to get him back. Obviously, when he went out, it seemed like Xavier Worthy didn't get the ball like in explosive plays like they were doing. So and then the card kid got hurt too. So I think it really just really it was hard to recycle and get yourself back. So I think having Quinn back is going to be a big deal for that team because they look really good.
Yeah. So 2019, Bama escapes over Texas. My game of the day. That was a tremendous watch. I think all Texans should have their head held, really high, and I think that program has much brighter days ahead. Listen, I mean, there's no more victories here. Texas is a proud program, and I think that I really do think that they put the SEC on notice today
Yeah.
with what they're going to be doing in the future, and I think that program is headed in the right direction. So, hey, we'll see how the season unfolds. We'll move on. Uh, Georgia and Samford. There's not a whole hell of a lot to break down here. Georgia was damn dominant from the jump. They kind of sleptwalked through the second half. They
Yeah.
beat the heck out of Samford. I mean, if you look at these stats here, I'll pull this up: 25 first downs to 3. Georgia put up 479 total yards of offense to 128. Just an absolute clinic. The one thing I will drive home from this game is that this is a different Stetson Bennett. I have Georgia. I will give you a spoiler on this. Georgia's top team in the country for me. Right now, I think they're the number one team in the country. And I think one of the main reasons why is I see an improvement from Stetson Bennett. Went 24 for 34, 300 yards in the score through the air. And I understand that it's Samford. I understand that. But there's an improvement in Stetson Bennett. He's got a confidence and he's got a swagger about him that I think can really benefit the Georgia Bulldogs this year. They're going to have a great running attack with Kendall Milton and all these guys and the multiple tight ends. Brock Bowers, I know your favorite.
Hmm.
But Stetson Bennett is taking that offense to a different level this year. And that defense is just daggum nasty. And I've got the Georgia Bulldogs as the top team in the country. Not a whole lot to take from this game, but they've showed me everything I needed to see last week. And they didn't disappoint me in that first half this week. Just a systematic ass whooping is what they put on them.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Georgia. I mean, we thought there was going to be a drop off when you had all these draft picks that went. We know they have talent, but I mean, man, they just reloaded. They got these guys in there. They've given up 3 points total for the whole year. And I think people forget like they dominated Oregon. So you put a lot of energy in that game. So there's going to be some layover as far as when you play the next game, especially when you play opponent that, I mean, being honest, you're a lot better than that team. So I think once they got what they needed and got the 30-0 lead, they just kind of shut it down and cooled and coasted and all. But I think they're the most dominating team that you have to have them number one because they're the most dominating team. They're the only team that's played a top 25 team that's absolutely obliterated their opponent. So what
Crushed
else
them.
can you say right now? That doesn't mean I think they're going to win the title. It just means right now I would have to have them number one because they've done everything. They've looked you eye test matters. So you look at them and you watch that team. They just do
Mm-hmm.
everything well. They're getting playmaking from the receivers. Obviously, Milton and the other guy, McGinnis. I might say his name wrong, but their whole just package just looks good. And like I told our good buddy Corey today, Stetson Bennett just looks like a different dude. He's a lot more confident than what I saw last year. Last year, there was certain games where he played in big games where he was kind of like hesitant. There's none of that when you see Stetson Bennett now. It's like he just attacks and he's always in control. And I think it's a team that's playing the best ball right now.
Yep, yep, we're in agreement there. I've got Georgia Bulldogs as number one team in the country, and I think it'll be interesting. It's going to be tough to bump Bam out of that spot because they did go into in a tough environment in Austin to play Texas. It's hard to kind of knock them there because that's obviously a much tougher opponent than Sanford. But Georgia, just right now, they simply look more crisp and more clean in
Hmm.
what they do. Bama worries me with their inability right now to stretch the field. Last year they had it with Mechie and Jamison Williams, and this year I just don't see that. And I mentioned that to you earlier.
Hmm.
And as they go down the road, Bama's schedule gets pretty tough. That's going to be interesting to see with their inability to stretch the field right now. Bryce is going to have to keep putting on a cape, and
Yep.
I think that may catch up to him. And this is going to lead us into. I'm just going to go down in order with what I think our teams are here. Um, the Michigan Wolverines tonight. Whole lot to talk about here. We're not going to get crazy in depth. It's Hawaii. They were always going to beat the hell out of Hawaii. Hawaii lost a lot of people last year. Coach Chang is a record-setting QB. He's going to get that program up and running again and get them where they need to be. But it's a tough matchup for Hawaii. It was a night game. There's a rain delay. But the story was JJ was making his first start tonight, and boy, oh boy, did JJ McCarthy absolutely look the part and light it up. He went 11 of 12, 229 yards in the air, three TDs, averaged 19 yards of completion. I mean, put another 16-yard run on the ground. I mean, JJ McCarthy looks like the real deal. We've talked about this before with Michigan. If they want to take the next step, great win last year over Ohio State. I mean, anybody familiar with the program who's rooted for them or who's got their, their lineage linked to that program in that area, like I do, you know what that win meant. But you always wonder what's the ceiling on Michigan, right? It kind of felt like with Cade McNamara and the way that they were running that offense last year, that ceiling was kind of the occasional win over Ohio State and the occasional Big Ten title. I'm here to tell you it feels different with JJ McCarthy. It feels like their ceiling has kind of been broken through. With that guy, he is a V12 type quarterback that can make all the throws. He's fast, he's athletic, he has a moxie and a confidence. I think that tonight, I know it's Hawaii, but I think that Michigan's ceiling rose tonight. I think their ceiling really rose tonight. And it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. They ended up beating the slop out of the Hawaii Rainbows, 56-10. Game could have been probably 80-0. They took a lot of the starters out in the third and fourth quarter.
Hmm.
Um, just really hammered them. 588 total yards for Michigan. Um, Something key to note here, and if people watched the game, they saw Cade McNamara really came in and struggled, got sacked multiple times. And we've talked about this with Cade. He seems like a game manager. He's not a terrible quarterback, but it just seems like everything comes to him a step slow, a second slow. Got sacked a couple times, and then when he tried to release and uncork one down the field, it was picked, and he just couldn't move the offense. No scoring drives. And then the seal was Davis Warren, a former walk-on, comes in the late third and fourth quarter and leads a pair of scoring drives after Cade couldn't move the offense. So just there's no more quarterback controversy in Michigan. It's going to be JJ McCarthy going forward.
Yeah, and there's a lot to take away from this game. I know it's Hawaii, but still, I watched the whole game. I really studied it, and it's like they weren't giving up any. I think I counted like maybe they got their second first down and like with a 2 minutes left in the half, Hawaii. So they were really just shutting down defensively. And two, with JJ, it's explosive. When you watch, he's a threat to run the ball. When you run a read option, you have to account for him running the ball. You don't have to account for that when Cade's in the game, and he's
Hmm.
explosive and fast. Plus, he's got a rocket arm. He can get the ball there on throws that K just can't make. He's really special. The main thing with JJ was, are you going to one, stay healthy enough, and then two, are you going to do the smart things where you don't turn over the ball? So as long as he doesn't turn over the ball, I fully expect JJ to be the quarterback. In fact, Jim Harbaugh said after the game, JJ will start the next game. He's already announced that. So
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a sign that that's his guy. So as long as JJ doesn't have some freak turnover games, I think he's going to be the guy, and that's the way it should be. Because if you want to get to that, go past the Final Four playoff level or get to compete for a title, you got to have somebody that separates yourself with a quarterback, and the quarterback's the most important position on the field. Just has to
Right.
be like the guys that are in the title games. You got to have quarterbacks, and
Right.
JJ gives them that. I love
Hmm.
this defense. I think this defense is even better than what they were last year because they're more complete in the back end, the secondary, and then the
Hmm.
linebackers are better, and the defensive line has more depth than what they had last year. They had basically the two guys in the end, and the guys inside were pretty good, but these guys are really good overall. It kind of reminds me of the FSU when I watch FSU's defense compared to last year. It's like two guys really carried stuff. Like this year, it's more team wise. They're so deep at Michigan with all their guys, and you see the way they swarm to the ball, and there's going to be a problem if you want to try to run on them. I mean, good luck because it's really difficult to run on Michigan, and it's just a really good team. It's a team that I would have in the top three for me. I mean, I think they're that good, and I think their ceiling is rising. Now we have to see what they do when they play some bigger games down the road, but it's
Right.
going to be this going to be a tough team to beat. I mean, they now that they have their quarterback situation filled, and now they have an explosive guy there. It just makes this team. You have to rise the level of what you think of Michigan even though it's just Hawaii. You have to rise it up.
Yeah, I think they've kind of made a statement, and there was a lot of hype coming into the season about this team. And I know I've made some bold statements. I think they're the best team in the Big Ten, and that's not disrespect to Ohio State because Ohio State obviously has a lot of ballers. They are there every year. They have been the standard in the Big Ten, bar none, for the past 20 years. There's no arguing it. But this Michigan team is out there posting basketball scores on teams and kind of looking good doing it. Obviously, Ohio State, they won against Arkansas State today pretty big, but it didn't feel like just the dominant performance that you're used to. I think they're going to have to kind of get some things squared away. It just feels like Michigan is just kind of seamless. Again, this was 42-0 at halftime. This could have been an 80-0 game if they didn't start putting in other guys. They had walk-ons returning kicks, walk-ons running for touchdowns. I mean, they really kind of spread out the wealth a little bit in this game. And they have so many weapons. Michigan does. They got two stud backs and Corum and Edwards both flashed today, both scored. They had five guys score touchdowns running the ball. Adriel Anthony is a really good receiver. Didn't even have a catch today, and that was who Cade McNamara was targeting on his interception. And there's still the offense is humming. So this offense has dudes. This defense has dudes. This team to me is the closest thing to Bama in Georgia, and I do think there's separation between Bama, Georgia, and Michigan. But I do not think it's the separation that you saw last year in the Final Four. If Michigan can navigate a very manageable schedule, and if they can find a way to go down there to Columbus and get a win for the first time in almost 20 years, I think that this Michigan team will have a strong showing in the playoff. Really, I've got nothing else to talk about there. I mean, this team is what I thought they would be, and it's going to be interesting to see the next month or so as the schedule strengthens. It's pretty weak right now, but as it strengthens, to see if they can go into Iowa, Des Moines, not Des Moines, but if they can go into Hawkeye Stadium and get a win there. They've got Maryland in a couple weeks coming. They're going to have a home game with Wisconsin. I know Wisconsin lost today. We'll get to that. But
Mhm.
we'll see. I think this Michigan team's real deal. I think Jim Harbaugh turned the corner last year. I really do.
Yeah, I think the two differences with their team, if people want to know why Michigan's better, one, their back end on their secondary is so much different than what I saw last year. Bunch of short
Mhm.
dudes last year. Now these guys are physical. They're more grown. They're more developed. Their
Mhm.
bodies look more developed. They make plays on the ball a lot more aggressive than what I saw last year.
Mhm.
And then two on offense, the playmakers at receiver. Like they didn't have the Ronnie Bell because they lost him early in the year. They have him back. They have so many playmakers at receiver. We know about the two running backs. I mean, I think that's expected, but I think the receivers and the back end and the secondary to me is what's changed Michigan.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an exciting. Yeah, I'm excited for it. I had a lot of family at the game today. I know they were real excited under the lights. It's always a good time. And Michigan looks like they look like they're going to have a squad. They look like they're going to be there for the duration. I don't see a loss for this team until they go to the horseshoe. I know Michigan State's going to be a tough game. Penn State's going to be a tough game. Wisconsin will be a tough game. Iowa on the road will be a tough game. But I think this team's got the tools to get it done. So now we're going to roll through some kind of ho hum top teams that kind of ho-hum their way. Ohio State 45-12, not a whole lot to get into. Arkansas State, James Blackman, who we're very familiar with, was the quarterback at Arkansas State. They couldn't get in the end zone, a bunch of field goal kicks. Ohio State pulls away in the third quarter with 21 points in the third quarter to kind of space themselves up. This was a 21-9 ball game at the half. Just a ho-hum effort, really. Ohio State was never going to lose this game, but it just didn't look overly impressive. I don't want to be too much of a homer in saying that because I know this team is uber talented. Henderson is a phenomenal back, 2 scores, 87 yards. C.J. Stroud had 351 and 4 TDs. Those are monster numbers. But just overall, and Harrison had a big day, 184 yards, 3 TDs. So he looks like he's next up for the receivers there. But overall, it just doesn't feel like a dominant Ohio State team yet. We'll see if that changes. But last week, I gave them a good pat on the back because I thought they played with a lot of grit. And maybe they have more grit than just top-end talent. But it feels a little different. It feels like Michigan is Ohio State, whereas Ohio State is kind of Michigan, where they're really talented, but they kind of grind out. And Michigan's just kind of blowing doors off people. But I understand the competition not that great, so we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, 45-12, Ohio State over Arkansas State. Do you have anything on that game? Anything stand out to you?
I mean, the thing I look for when you're having a team that's overmatched, like Ohio State is to Arkansas State, is what they do early in the game because that's a team you should put away. We saw that with
Mm,
Michigan. Bam, put them away, 42-0. Like
done.
when you don't put somebody away, that tells you their grit's there, but the overall skill set. Chris Olave is not there. Garrett Wilson's not there. I mean, you see a big difference in they're talented receivers, but they're not those guys were elite special dudes that you could throw anywhere, and they're just going to make plays. And last year when Ohio State was in this position, they would just kill teams. They would knock them out, bam, they're done. This year it's more of
Mhm.
a work, it's more of a struggle a little bit, even with C.J. Stroud turning. So I think it's just a situation where it's going to be forced a little bit more than what Ohio State's used to, and that's just really where
Yeah.
they're at.
That's where they're at. We'll see if Ohio State can kind of pick it up here in the coming weeks. That brings us to Clemson, another ho hum performance for them. I mean, they were up 28-9 over Furman at the half. They end up closing out with another touchdown to go, 35-12. Um, I'm not overly impressed with this Clemson team. And for the first time in a few years, I really think that there is a very serious and real chance for an NC State or even a Florida State or even a Wake Forest again to kind of overtake them in this division with the ACC. This does not feel like the dominant program of 20, 16, 17, 18, 19, and maybe even 20. It just doesn't feel the same. It just doesn't. I don't know how else to put it. 35-12 over Furman. Furman's right down the street from them. It just doesn't feel the same at Clemson right now.
Yeah, it's not the Taj Boyd years that we're used to, where you put up
Mm,
crazy numbers with Nuke Hopkins and Sammy Watkins. It's not
yeah.
that. You don't feel scared. You don't feel fearful when you look at the
Mm-mm.
Clemson offense with DJ running the show. And it's just like to a point, like I ain't telling Dabo what to do, dude, but I think it's to a point where you're going to have to get Klubnik in there and get that kid and see what he can do. Maybe a JJ situation like last year where you just see kind of what he does even as a freshman, because this isn't
Mm-hmm.
going to work. This is not going to beat the bigger name teams that have good defenses. You can't just lull people to sleep when you face teams that can match you with close to talent. And when they come to Tallahassee, if they play DJ, I feel pretty good about FSU's chances because of what he does. He's just not electric. He's not explosive. So yeah, I think it reminds me a lot of last year, what I saw last year. Really good defense, but they're carrying the load. They're carrying everything, and then eventually that
Mm-hmm.
defense gets tired and it wears down. Eventually, you have to have some kind of productivity about your offense. It has to be some explosibility, and I'm just not seeing that. It's in spurts, but it's in small spurts.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot there. That was kind of part of the ho hum. The last of the ho hum is Oklahoma 33 over Kent State 3. That was a 7-3 ball game at the half. I mean, Oklahoma's playing Kent State 7-3 at the half. Had a great third quarter, 24 points, and then they tacked on a safety in the fourth. But Dylan Gabriel had a decent day, 296 and 3 scores. Mims had a big day, 163 and 2 tutties. But Oklahoma's got a little bit of work to do right now. I think Texas. I think Texas looks a little better than Oklahoma right now. I know Texas picked up an L, but they played the standard. Oklahoma, I really don't have a whole lot more. It's just going to take some time to see what the ceiling of this team is. But this does not feel like a Lincoln Riley Oklahoma team, particularly offensively. They're not blowing your doors off. Yeah, Oklahoma, I want to kind of see a little more from. They don't feel like a playoff threat to me right now.
Yeah, and I kind of warned people this last week. I said you're gonna the Oklahoma fans, you're gonna have to settle in because you got Brent Venables. He's a defensive coach. You're not gonna have that
Mm-hmm.
explosive ability what you have with Lincoln Riley or before him with
Mm-hmm.
Bob Stoops. It's different. It's going to be an adjustment. You have Jeff Leby who came from Ole Miss, but that's going to take some time to mesh in and get comfortable and get the offense the way they want it. So it's going to be up and down. And I agree with you. I want to see more of them, but as I said last week, people need to prepare themselves for that. It's going to be more lower score games than what they're used to because Brent Venables is known for
Mm-hmm.
defense and he's not some offensive genius like what Lincoln Riley was when he was at Oklahoma.
Yeah, and speaking of Lincoln Riley, I mean, we'll touch on a couple teams that are going to be moving up in Mike and Rico's top 10 and in the AP top 10 that comes out Tuesday. We talk about USC. I'm starting to feel pretty good about this USC team. I watched them. I watched that offense just uncorking balls. Caleb Williams was just chucking it, 341 and 4 TDs. They were on the road at Stanford. It's a rivalry out there. I know Stanford has dipped a little bit as far as their standard is concerned. But USC looked good, hung 41 up there, 41 to 28. Stanford scored 14 in the fourth to kind of make that a little closer than it really was. It was 41-14 prior to that little burst they had there. This USC team, I'm thinking, is a little farther ahead than many people are giving them credit for. They're top 10 now, and they're going to be a whole heck of a lot higher here pretty soon. I was impressed with them today. They've got some dudes. They've got some guys that are going to be on your fantasy team in a couple years on offense. They got some dudes that got some quick twitch, muscle fiber going on, and they can get missing in a hurry. This USC team looks really, really good. And when they battle Utah, that's going to be one heck of a game right there. But real impressed with USC. And then the other one I'll tack on so you can kind of double team it. Oklahoma State just keeps, they kind of keep winning and they keep staying relevant. 34-17 win today over Arizona State. They kind of pulled away at the end. That was a pretty good ball game, and they ended up pulling away 34-17. They're going to be moving up because we're going to get to some meat and taters here in a minute. But, Mike, USC, Oklahoma State, anything sticking out about those two schools?
Well, I think when I saw USC the first week, I was kind of like, okay, that's kind of a very lesser opponent. This one they went on the road to Stanford. They played there, and I really get the sense that this offense and the kids around there is really starting to catch on to stuff. It's like everything's clicking faster. They look much more crisper as far as what they do, and they're going to score a lot of points. I mean, we talked about how you cut down in Oklahoma with Lincoln Riley leaving, but Lincoln Riley's there at SC, and they're going to put up some points. They're going to be one of the most explosive offenses around. Now you'll have to question what the defense is going to do, but overall, I think it's a team that's moving up. Do I think they're up there with the echelons of the Michigans and the Alabamas, Georgia? No, I don't, but I think they're going to be an exciting team to watch. I think they're certainly going to be moving up, in that top 10 list that we always do every week, and certainly a team that I like the way the offense is trending.
Yep. Well, now we've got to get into the holy crap. Holy crap. Man, we'll start with the Texas debacle. Texas A&M has
Mm.
Appalachian State come into College Station. Now, I don't want to disrespect Appalachian State. Clearly, I know what Appalachian State can do. Been there. Appalachian State played North Carolina really tough. Dang near won that game, a play away. Appalachian State was a field goal away from beating Miami last year in Hard Rock. So Appalachian State is no pushover. They're a good team. But I am shocked. 17-14 over A&M. A&M didn't score in the first or the fourth quarter. Serious issues with Coach Fisher still having Haynes King in there. He ain't it. He just ain't it. You got Max Johnson. Max Johnson, in my opinion, has got to be the guy. I know Coach Fisher is a rock star coach. I love Coach Fisher to death, but I don't see what the choice is here. Haynes King ain't it. And that offense doesn't move with him. and Texas A&M has simply too much talent to be struggling with App State. I'm not mad so much that they lost the game. I mean, I am, but I'm not. They lost the game scoring 14 points. North Carolina just hung up like 60 something on the school. It makes no sense to me that you've got a national championship aspiration and you have national championship talent on this team. You have the greatest recruiting class in the history of recruiting, and you're scoring 14 points against Appalachian State. I'm shocked. I'm shocked at this game. I know that there's been a history of Coach Fisher having some games that kind of got away from him against lesser opponents,
Mm-hmm.
but this one is shocking, given the opportunity that's there for A&M. This is a team I thought was a dark horse to try to kind of sneak into a playoff if they could get the Bama win or if they could run the table outside of that game. And that all came crashing down today. Just shocked, Mike. I don't take it away. I'm shocked at this one.
Yeah, I was very surprised too. Even when the game was 7-7, I saw it and I was like, okay, it's okay. I mean, slow start, whatever. I know how Appalachian State is; they're tough, but it's like, I mean, then I turned and watched the game. And I'm like, these guys have no flow to the offense with Hayden King. Like absolutely no flow. He has no like chemistry with the receivers. There's just a constant thing. I mean, we talked about them scoring 14 points, 7 of those off a kickoff at 95 yards. So they only scored one offensive touchdown. So I mean, you have to do something to change this up. This is not going to work. There's too much talent on Texas A&M to be looking like this. They should not look like this with that much talent. They got to figure it out, and I mean, I think they will, but I think it's
Oof.
just a shocking, just result of how it went down.
I got to read off some of these stats, Mike. I mean, this is when you break this down, this is jaw dropping stuff. I would not want to be at an A&M practice this week, and I would not want to be the Miami Hurricanes playing this team next week because this is shocking stuff. This is gonna be a who the hell are you type week. We're gonna
Hmm.
find out who the Texas A&M Aggies are. 9 first downs for the game. Okay, they did not pass or rush for 100 yards. They passed for 97, they rushed for 89, and they got outpossessed by Appalachian State 41 minutes to 18. That is shocking. That is abysmal. That is substandard. I cannot believe a Jimbo Fisher coach team was outplayed offensively by a lesser opponent to this degree. I'm absolutely shocked. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, and it wasn't an anomaly either. If you go back to the week before, they looked like crap. They weren't good on offense either. On that first week, they ended up winning like 30-7 after a rain delay and stuff. But they were only up 17-7 at one point in that game. So they did not look good the first 2 weeks. And you got to look at the quarterback. It always comes back to the quarterback. You got to look at the quarterback, and that's the one constant that isn't there. That you got to change some stuff up. Now, I fully have the utmost trust in Jimbo to do what he needs to do. He's really good in these situations, but it's clear you have to change something what you're doing on offense because this is not working. You can't have lulls where you're just this much out of sync or chemistry with your offense. So it was shocker, but at the same time, um, the one thing I will say about Jimbo for Texas A&M fans out there, he's very good in these situations with big games, and certainly have a big game against Miami. He's very good in those settings, but they got to shift some stuff and fix some stuff, and it's going to be a long week. I feel for those kids at practice because I know Jimbo well, and it's going to be a brutal week of practice. It's going to be a brutal week of when Miami has to play them because this is probably the last thing the Miami Hurricanes probably want to see because one, you go into that game, this is a team that just lost to App State, so they're going to be fired up. Two, if you lose to them, you just lost to a team that lost to App State, and if you beat them, they're going to be farther down. Where you know, it's like the bonus that Miami was going to get off this game is
Yeah.
just not there. It's just not there.
No, it's not. And I mean, I think if Miami comes in there and beats them, I'm still going to give Miami a ton of credit
Yeah,
because that's a tough place to
absolutely,
play.
absolutely.
But this is a. We're going to be there at the game. We're going to be in College Station for those wondering. We're going to be in the house. We're going to be there. We're going to see it. And I'm very interested to see the response for Texas A&M Aggies. This is a team I had picked as a dark horse to
Hmm.
factor in, definitely be top 10, top 5, and really, pining for that fourth spot. And so I'm shocked. I'm shocked that I didn't see this offense being this abysmal at this point in the season, especially given the level of competition. I'm
Mhm.
just shocked. And but they were not alone because oh boy, we have another doozy for you.
Mhm.
The Marshall Thundering Herd roll into South Bend and pretty much wire to wire outplay and defeat the Notre Dame Fighting Irish 26-21. Both teams scored a pair of touchdowns in the fourth quarter. It was a 12-7 ball game heading in. Big
Mhm.
shout out to former Knoll Kalan Laybourne, 31 carries, buck 63 and a tutty.
Mhm.
We talked about this Notre Dame team, and I said they're obviously going to be good. Love Marcus Freeman. He's kind of a young rock star. But man, it's a big difference in calling the defense and running a program and fitting coaches around you that can run your program and run things the way that you want to run it. And you got to have a quarterback. I'm glancing over here because BYU and Baylor are still knotted at 20. It's in second overtime. This game won't end. Top 10 team here we need to talk about. But Notre Dame does not have a quarterback. Tyler Buchner went 18-32, 201, and 2 picks. Then they brought in the Pine Kid. He threw for a score, and then he threw another pick.
Mhm.
Notre Dame is hurting. They're 0-2. You and I both know about that from last year, from when FSU
Mhm.
went 0-4. It was very difficult. This is a long road ahead for Notre Dame. This was a terrible loss. Marshall should not be able to come into Notre Dame Stadium and beat the Fighting Irish with the ranked number 8 in the country. Um, Man, Coach Freeman needed a quarterback. He needed it. It's too late now. You got what you got, but man, he
Mhm.
needed a quarterback, and he doesn't have one. And I think Notre Dame is really looking like a team that's going to be struggling for bowl eligibility at this point.
Yeah, and I've said this before. I mean, this is why I'm so against playing somebody good the first game of the year. This is what
Mhm.
happens. You play really hard. You look really good. You showed a lot of grit in the Ohio State game. You put so much into that game. Then you come back home. You're playing an undermanned opponent. You play lesser. You play down. You're not inspired, and then you lose. The same thing happened to FSU. It just really kills you when you the following game to get your kids up. It's really tough. But as you pointed out, the first thing they got to do is they got to find a quarterback. I mean, those two guys they brought in are just they weren't good. The uh,
Mhm.
the first kid you mentioned that wasn't good in the Ohio State game, and he wasn't good in this game either. He was very poor. So you got to go out there. You can't go into the season. This goes for Jimbo, or if it goes for anybody else. You got to have a guy that you know can get the job done, that can run what you want to run. Because if you don't have a quarterback, these are the results that you get. This is what it looks like, and it's abysmal. And to me, this is the biggest shocker of the day because there's no bigger shocker. There's not a worse upset than the Notre Dame loss today. It's massive, and it just completely ruins their season.
Yeah, it's a huge one, and it shook it up, man. It shook up our top 10. It shook up the national picture. We thought maybe if Notre Dame could kind of run the table outside of that Ohio State, they could factor in nationally. But that team's obviously got a long way to go. Coach Marcus Freeman is the first coach in Notre Dame history to lose his first 3 starts. Is it fair? No, but this ain't horseshoes. This is winning football games.
Yep.
And Coach Freeman, I like him. I think that there is a bright future for him there, but the seat gets hot quick, and he's going to have to string some wins together. And I really want to see him get a quarterback. He's going to need a quarterback, and he's going to need one soon. Notre Dame drops a big one. Another shocker. Notre Dame and A&M just really shocked me today. We talked about it. That's man. That leads us to a nightcap game or a night-ish cap game that we really look forward to. And I gotta say, man, I
Mhm.
went out on a limb after Florida had a huge, huge win last week when they beat Utah, who was ranked number 7, came in the swamp. It was a great game. Florida makes a big defensive stand. Let's see what Baylor does here. Baylor get the stop. No, you got holding in the end zone. This game won't end. Uh, Florida had a great week last week. Beat Utah. It was a great game. Kind of had some things happen on that last drive where you're kind of scratching your head if you're Utah, like what the heck were we doing? But hey, Florida pulled it out. So going into this week, a lot of momentum, man. They shot the Gators all the way up to number 12 in the country, like from unranked to number 12, like a rocket, right? And so we're like, it kind of felt like, okay, the Gators look better, you know. Coach Billy Napier looks like he's getting it together. They're moving more like the Florida teams are used to move, and they are, man, a hell of an athlete. But something in me was like, I don't know, that Kentucky team beat their ass last year. That Kentucky team has been quality now for a couple years in a row, 10-win team. And Coach Stoops is what? A DB coach by trade. That's
Mhm.
what he does. That's what he did back at Miami. He knows defensive back play. A.R. Richardson, or excuse me, Anthony Richardson is a mobile threat. He is a strong arm quarterback, but he struggles with passing in windows. And I knew that Coach Stoops was going to make him pass in windows. And AR had a very terrible game. I'm just going to put it flat out there. 14 to 35, two picks and a lost fumble. No touchdowns that I'm seeing. Yeah, no touchdowns. So a 3 turnover day, no touchdowns. Really, as high as he was last week and as awesome as he looked just that bad. The pick six was high school freshman quarterback level bad. I mean, it
Mhm.
was just a flat ball that he pointed and he aimed. Um, and that really broke the game open. It felt like at that point that there was just no coming back for the Gators. Kentucky was missing, 30-yard field goal kicker or kicks, and we know how we feel about kickers. Kentucky had some stuff go kind of against them, and they still ended up winning by 10. Very humbling loss for the Florida Gators. Florida Gators have a ton of athletes, but Anthony Richardson is going to have to improve as a passer here. This was a truly abysmal day. Huge win for Stoops and the Wildcats. I think they have firmly supplanted the Gators as the number 2 team in the SEC East. It is the Kentucky Wildcats for the second year in a row. And Kentucky can play some defense, and they do enough on offense. Outpossessed the Gators 33-26, out first downed them 17-12. The yardage was close, 272 to 279. They played a cleaner game. You know, 2 picks in a fumble for Anthony Richardson today. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on the Gators?
Yeah, I mean, first off, if you really think back, we talked about the Utah game last week. I mean, if that quarterback just makes a good decision, you might be talking about Florida being 0-2 off that one play. If you combine that with today's game, but um, I think Florida started off good. They got off to a good start. I think they got up at 16-7. You're kind of like, okay, they're going to be fine. And then just it just felt like the whole game Richardson could got not get in the rhythm, and that's been my criticism. What I've said all along, he struggles reading the field. He struggles with timing. He struggles with
Mhm.
accuracy. He's just the arm is strong, but it doesn't feel like he has a total command of where it's going, and he struggles with that. And he also just struggles with decision making, as we saw tonight through a horrific pick six. That was like, I mean, like you just said, I mean, that's a high school play. That shouldn't happen. And,
Awful.
and then and then another pick he threw just as the second half started to the defensive lineman. That's just that's high school type stuff. I mean, the guys in front of you, you would throw it over them. You don't throw it, try to go around them, try to go
Hmm.
through them, and just you do that, you're gonna. I mean, that's a recipe to lose. And I don't know where they go from here because he is what he is. But I think they have to start manufacturing stuff that fits his game more if
Yeah.
Florida wants to succeed. You can't he can't be just like a drop back passer and drop back in the pocket and read stuff because as I said last week with Utah, they did not contain him running the ball, so
No.
they paid for it. In Kentucky, which is a really good defense, they did a really good job bracking him, forcing him to throw balls, using pressure, and it turned into just a nightmare night for AR. I mean, just everything went
Yeah.
wrong. But that's the recipe I expect other teams to use when they play the Gators. They're going to do that. So they're going to have to figure it out and see what works. But I think Florida's in trouble in figuring this out because I this is the second game in a row too. Their defense has it. I mean, they've given up a lot of explosive plays, so they're gonna have to figure some stuff out on both sides of the ball. But They can certainly do it. AR's a great athlete, phenomenal athlete. They just got to figure out ways that is going to put him in a comfortable situation where he just doesn't look out of rhythm. And two, I didn't really like the body language I saw from AR when things
Hmm.
weren't going good.
No, and Emory Jones transfers out of that program, so they are fully invested. It's AR's team,
Hmm.
and he's either going to drive it, he's either going to steer it to the promised land or steer it into the rocks at this point. Um,
Yeah.
he's a tremendous athlete. He has a lot of upside, but he is not there as a passer. And anybody who thinks he's there as a passer, you may want to look at some of this game film. The
Hmm.
throws just are not there. He's aiming them. He's putting too much pop and too much zip on throws. It reminds me a lot of Joe Milton, who was a quarterback at Michigan a couple years ago when they were a sub 500 team. A lot of hype around him as well, and
Hmm.
he just didn't cut the mustard. He just couldn't pick the offense up and couldn't make the throws. So I don't think AR is going to have that fate. I think he can still be a uh, really good college quarterback, but he is going to have to improve as a passer. So Kentucky 26-16 over Florida. I picked that. Feel good about that pick
You
because
did. You nailed it.
yeah, I felt good about that. I know it was in the swamp, but I just felt like that was a bad matchup for the Gators, and it ended up being and a costly one. Division loss too early.
Hmm.
It's week 2, tough. So a couple other teams that kind of held the line today. Utah 73-7 over Southern Utah. They bounced back. Not a whole lot to talk about there. Utah can score. Southern
Hmm.
Utah can't. Arkansas. This was a pretty interesting game. They dropped 23 points in the fourth quarter. South Carolina had 14. They end up winning 44-30. So not a lot of defense being played out there. Arkansas's got a big game with Bama coming up in, I want to say, about 3 or 4 weeks where Bama's
Hmm.
coming to town to Fayetteville. Circle that one. That's going to be an interesting game. I think
Hmm.
Arkansas is going to try to build up towards that game. Do you feel like Arkansas is a threat to Bama?
I think they're a threat because they're really tough in Fayetteville. And two, if we see the same offense with Alabama, yeah, it's going to be a major threat. But
Mhm.
Alabama's going to have 2 games to get warmed up before that game. So assuming they get the kinks worked out, it's still going to be
Mhm.
a threat. It's going to be a game I have circled, and certainly it's going to be a big game and a big challenge for Alabama. Probably one of the biggest challenges when you look at Arkansas. I really like this team. Obviously, it gave up a lot of points, but they have no trouble scoring in a lot of variety of ways. My question about Arkansas is, can you attack Alabama vertically? And that's really been their problem when they play them. Can you do that vertically? Hurt them when they played Georgia when they tried that. We
Mhm.
know Alabama's got beast up front, so can you contain them enough where you can get the vertical game going? If they can, it's going to be a fun weekend to talk football because you might have another upset. But if they can't, it'll be much more of the same. But it's definitely a threat.
Then a couple of teams I'm really interested in because I want to see kind of what they're ceiling, and I don't quite know yet. Michigan State and Miami both win today. Neither one was really threatened. Um, Michigan State 52-0 at home over Akron. Huge third quarter, had 28 points in the third quarter. They blow out Akron. Thorne struggled again today, threw 2 picks, had a couple hundred yards. Um, Michigan State, I know how competitive they are, and this the DNA of that program, and especially when it comes to playing Michigan. They have got the better of Michigan over the past 15 years, and they really put a lot into that game. I just worry about this team week to week when they play real competition because they just don't seem to have the horsepower. They seem like a V6, and they're going to need to be a V8 on some occasions this year, and I'm not quite sure that they're going to be able to do that. But remains to be seen. They're going to be jacked up in the ranking. They're going to be close to a top 10 team with all the turmoil and what's going on. So it's going to be interesting to see Michigan State. And then Miami. Miami comes out there, they're down 73 to Southern Miss to start that game. They end up cleaning it up, have a really good second half. And they end up looking pretty impressive on the 30-7 win over Southern Miss. First half was not good, and I know we were talking to our good buddy Gino, who's a diehard Kane fan,
Hmm.
and they did not look like they should the first half. Turned it up in the second half, but they're coming into College Station, and we're going to see what these teams have. Michigan State's going out west to play Washington, and then Miami's going to go to College Station next week. What are you looking for next week out of these two teams?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, in the Miami game, this is just my perspective. I think Miami is searching for what identity they want to be. There's one moment they look like they want to run, and another moment which I think they should do because that's what they do so well. And then there's another moment where they're trying to force the passing game when they are still looking for wide receivers. So I think that's what happened today. That's part of the struggle. Obviously, the offensive line kind of struggled in the first half. Gave a couple sacks, and I think TVD had a pick. But
Hmm.
I think for me, the big key is what do you guys do? What happens in that first quarter, whether it's Texas A&M or Miami? Both of you guys are struggling the first quarter. So to me, that sets the tone. If Texas A&M comes out with fire in their eyes and they jump on them, it's going to be a rough day for Miami. And then two, if Miami comes in there and matches them, and we see the same low Texas A&M, could be an interesting game where could be advantage Miami. So for me, I think first quarter is going to tell you everything in that game of who sets the tone.
It's going to be real interesting next week. We're going to have a lot to talk about. Miami 30-7 over Southern Miss. Michigan State 52-0 over Akron. Get down to a couple more of these ho-hums. Interesting game, I thought, because it was SEC, ACC, which is always fun to talk about. A couple schools that are hard to get into. Wake Forest and Vanderbilt battled it out in Vandy. Wake Forest pounds them 45-25. So chalk one up for the ACC over the SEC. That's always fun to do. SEC East had a rough day, with the exception of the last game we're going to talk about, and I'm going to let you gloat on that one because you called it.
Yep.
SEC East got beat up today. Mizzou got crushed. Vanderbilt, SEC East kind of darling. Florida takes a loss to a fellow SEC East team. So Georgia just looks like they're going to run roughshod over the SEC East. We've got Houston, tough loss, double overtime to Texas Tech. I felt like Tech was going to get that game. Tech's 2-0. They look like they're going to make some noise. That's one of those teams you don't want to play. Houston was kind of a dark horse, kind of playoff hopeful team. They go down 33-30. Let's see. This is the last play. Baylor's going up top. Game over. You've got another top 10 team has just fallen. The Baylor Bears have fallen to BYU. Just carnage today. So we'll be able to
Upset
break
weekend.
that one down. Yeah, I mean, the Big 12, holy moly. Texas Tech, big win for the Big 12. Houston, you will not be in the playoff. You needed to run the table, and you did not do that. Ole Miss 59-3 over Central Arkansas. Jackson Dart didn't do a whole lot, didn't have to. They had 28 points in the first quarter. That's what you do when you play a Central Arkansas. You hang
Yep.
28 up on them. Lane Kiffin, we'll see what he could do this year. I mean, he's kind of flying under the radar. We're going to see what he can do. Do you feel like Ole Miss could be a threat?
I think they're kind of a mystery, or unknown, or a dark horse, whatever wording adjective you want to put in there. I don't think it's the
Mm-hmm.
same kind of buzz that they had last year. Well, that team was so explosive in so many ways. I think this one's kind of an unknown. Jeff Levy's gone. He's gone to over there to Oklahoma. So he's over there with Brent Middlevilles. So what are they going to do as far as the offense? How is it going to look? I think probably a middle of the road team, but probably one we don't know about. It's kind of a dark horse. So and we haven't figured it out yet because they're just starting the season. They're playing a lot of teams that they're certainly outmanned the other team in talent, but I think it's one of those dark horses that we kind of just a mystery we don't know about yet.
Yep, we're going to have to see what the ceiling is on Ole Miss. NC State, not a whole lot to talk about there. 55-3. They bounced back. They look a lot better than they looked last week.
Yeah,
Last week, they
yeah,
really struggled. Should have lost to ECU. Got outplayed. Kickers missed kicks because that's what kickers do. Uh, Almost damn unanimous. This is what
yep.
kickers do. They just
Every
they
night.
just they just don't hold the line. I mean, I'm sorry. There's probably some good kickers who are going to read this and be like, "Oh, Ricardo's a jackass." Kickers need to start making freaking kicks. That's all you do. You kick the ball. Keep it in between the hashes when you're kicking the ball off, and put it in between the uprights. That's literally all you do. Kick the ball. And last week, East Carolina couldn't have their kicker do what a kicker's supposed to do. This week, NC State did not come down to a kicker, 55-3.
Yeah.
Still looking like they're going to be dangerous out of the ACC. Definitely a threat to Clemson along with Florida State. We'll see how that shakes out. And a game that was really interesting. I got to shout out one of my former Ram legends, O'Shea Grant. He picked this game. Washington State comes into Camp Randall and wins 17-14 over Wisconsin. Wisconsin is another team now, not to the same level because they're not a playoff team, but Wisconsin feels like they've dipped, kind of like Clemson has dipped. Wisconsin just does not seem like they have that same punch. They don't have that Big Ten championship punch. Neither does Iowa, but Iowa's not ranked to begin with. Wisconsin was ranked 19. They just don't have that punch to me. They return some dudes, but I don't know. Washington State goes in there and beats them. Washington State kind of won a mucky, kind of grind out, gritty game. And for a Pac 12 school to come in there and do that to Wisconsin, that's alarming to me. You got
Yeah,
any
and
thoughts on Wisconsin?
yeah, the thing with Wisconsin, when I think of Wisconsin, is like one, their offensive line is going to be good because that's what they do. They run the ball. They're really
Mm,
powerful, and they always have one good running back that's really good. They got a million of them in the NFL. But the main thing I noticed is like they usually have one or two receivers that are like, oh, that guy's explosive. That really, can take the top off things and just really make things difficult for defenses. And then the other thing is they usually have defenses, and their defense just doesn't look explosive as far as getting sacks and getting turnovers like they usually do. But yeah, I'm just not seeing the playmakers on either side of the ball compared to what they usually are. So I think that's what Wisconsin's trying to figure out is who their playmakers are, and probably the reason why they weren't able to
mhm.
get enough offense and explosibility to win this game.
Yeah, Wisconsin's a little bit of a disappointment. We'll see. They're gonna have their opportunities. I know they've got a game in the Big House coming up in I think 3 4 weeks, and that could be a
Yep.
statement game for them. They've done well when they've gone to the Big House previously, so we'll see what they do. Just covering the Baylor Bears. I mean, they go out there to Provo and they lose to BYU, 20-26. BYU gets a huge win. BYU's out there 2-0. They're ranked. BYU potential threat if they keep winning. We'll see. Baylor Bears, Coach Aranda, I'm a little surprised looking at these numbers. 117 penalty yards, 14 penalties, 117. Dave Aranda runs a pretty tight ship. He's a disciplined coach, and to see him have a team with 14 penalties, 117 total yards, that's a little shocking to me. Baylor was outgained 366 to 289. And this is just shaping up to be a big problem for the Big 12. I mean, the Big 12 had a chance to go out there and get a couple wins today that really could have helped them. They could have got this one, or they could have got that Bama win. Um, didn't happen. I mean, so we're right back to where we always are. It seems like with Oklahoma,
Hmm.
and maybe if Texas could run the table, but bad day for the Big 12. Bad day for the Big 12.
Yeah, I mean, I really I know how hard it is to play at Provo because we've seen FSU play there multiple times. I know Miami's
Hmm.
got upset there before. It's a tough place to play, but at the
Yeah.
same time, when I watch this game, watching the game, you're just like, okay, there's no way Baylor's going to lose this game because of the defensive prowess they have, and then two, the playmakers they have are usually better. But tonight they just didn't have it. It seemed to be a nip and tuck game back and forth, just slugfest back and forth. Both teams just slugging back and forth, and then just seemed like the motor for BYU was a little bit higher, and the mistakes were a lot higher for Baylor in this game. You mentioned the penalty yards; they also had a few turnovers. It's like when you go on the road, you can't turn the ball over. You can't have that many mistakes, and they just had too many mistakes tonight. Even though they had a chance in overtime to win it, but just more of the shakeup, Saturday, and also bad day for the Big 12, except for I guess Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. Really, that's the only takeaway. But it's just nationally, it wasn't a great day for that conference because they needed some of these wins to really kind of upstick their conference and kind of where they're going.
Yeah, Big 12 takes it now. And now is the part of the show where Mike gets to say, I told you so. The Tennessee Volunteers 34, the Pittsburgh Panthers 27. Tennessee goes into Pennsylvania, into Pittsburgh, and grabs a win over a really good Pittsburgh team
Yeah,
that just came off a backyard brawl victory. I think King Slovis went out of this game because I'm
yeah,
looking at it,
yeah. He did.
and that hurts them because Slovis was balling. Slovis is a big part of what they do, but Tennessee, huge win. How far can Tennessee go in the SEC?
Yeah, I mean, it was a really good game. It was about what I expected. I thought it would be high scoring. It was pretty high scoring. Obviously, the Slovis injury was disappointing because it was just back and forth. Obviously, Pitt got off to a nice lead, and it looked like whoa, they're going to jump on these guys. Got up 10-0, but Tennessee's done what they usually do, just jumped on them, just kept riding their offense, and then just their explosive ability. They are one of the best passing teams in the SEC overall. I mean, they're right up there with anybody. I mean, they hit explosive plays. They
Mhm.
Hendon Hooker, transfer from Virginia Tech, done a great job with that offense. That's why I really like this offense, the way they can attack you multiply, and I really like their defense. They know how to make big plays with their front. Their defense line's really good. I think it's probably I think Tennessee and Kentucky is probably the two teams that would try to battle Georgia if there was anybody. And I think Tennessee, in my opinion, would give Georgia the most trouble because they would attack them vertically, and that's the way you have to
Mhm.
attack Tennessee, a Georgia team. If you want to play with Georgia or maybe get an upset bid, you have to attack them vertically, and they're the only team I think can do that. I think Kentucky's more of a ground and pound and then play hard defense. I'm not sure that I don't think that style is going to work against a Georgia team that is better at that than you are. So I
Yeah.
think Tennessee's a different animal with the way they can attack you. So I think Tennessee for me is the more dangerous team overall, just because I like the way they're a different kind of animal how they attack you. It remind me a lot of Ole Miss a few years ago when he had all those big wideouts and Matt Corral was there. Just reminds me a lot of that team.
Yeah, I'm impressed with what I've seen from Tennessee, and they're going to shoot up in the rankings, and they deserve to. It's going to be interesting to see if Tennessee can challenge Georgia or at least give them a game. At this point, Georgia is just a team that I just don't see
Yeah,
losing until they get to Atlanta. And that's if Bama can kind of find their groove back passing the football. The rest of the SEC East is really just trying to scramble to see who could be the challenger for Georgia. Like who could give them a 60-minute challenge. Maybe it's Tennessee. We'll see. Tennessee's got a home game coming against the Gators. Man, that's going to be kind of a make or break game for both teams because if Tennessee gets that one, the confidence really grows. And that really kind of buries Florida. Florida could get that one, they climb right back up, and then we'll see what happens. But it all ultimately runs through Georgia. And, now we have our weekly top 10. And I've been plugging away at this as we've gone. And I'll tell you, the back end of that top 10, there's some teams that I had a hard time putting into the top 10. I'm not ready to do it yet. And we'll see how you feel about this top 10. I'll just read it off. My number one team in the country right now is the Georgia Bulldogs. I'm very confident in that. I know Bama won a tough game today, but I felt like Bama got a ton of breaks. I do not think Bama would have won that game if viewers would have played the whole game, and or if the officials didn't have their head up their ass. I'll be straight frank. They missed some calls that really screwed that game up. They missed a safety call. They missed a face mask call when Bijan was running in the end zone. He got face mask 15 yards. They missed a holding call on that final drive where
yeah,
Bryce Young
yeah.
ran out there. I mean,
They're
they missed some crushing calls. Crushing.
Yeah, they had a horrible day. I mean, they missed so many things that the play in the end
Yeah.
zone made no sense. They called roughing the they called you know roughing the passer on um at Texas, and then they called a personal foul, and then they picked up both of those, said they didn't call that, but then they didn't call the grounding, which
Mm-hmm.
he didn't get the ball to the line of scrimmage, and but they didn't throw the flag on that, so you can't go back and review that. So they screwed that up. And then they just, I mean, it's countless holds. They missed a hold on Will Anderson on Texas side, and then they obviously
Mm-hmm.
missed a blatant hold when Bryce Young was scrambling, just right in front of you too. So those officials, I don't know where they're from, but they had a really bad day.
Yep, they had a terrible day. Number two team in the country, it's going to be Bama. Doesn't really matter if you're 1-2. Tomato, tomato. I mean, it doesn't really matter. But Bama, right now, I feel like they've got to show that vertical pass game for me.
Yep.
Georgia would really give them trouble right now, in my estimation. Number three team, it sounds like a homer pick, but I'm going to try to take the homer out of it. I'm just going straight up off what I see. Michigan looks like a better overall team than Ohio State. Michigan made Ohio State quit last year. Literally, Ohio State let them walk into the end zone because they had no hope to stop them. And I don't think that gap has been bridged in the paint on either side of the line. I think the addition of J.J. McCarthy gives Michigan the first gunslinger at quarterback that they've had in many, many, many years and also raises their ceiling. I've got Michigan number 3, followed by Ohio State. Those two will play, so that will get settled out. Number 5, I'm putting USC. I watched USC today. They had dudes that reminded me of the dudes of past, of
Hmm.
those 04, 05, 06 USC type dudes, 03, 04, 05, 06. That little run they had with Matt Leinart and Pete Carroll, and just they had dudes on dudes. And they are starting to put me in the mind of that again. I want to keep my eye on them, but USC is entering the chat. They look good. That offense looks like it's humming. Lincoln Riley can put up points and win you Heisman. So Caleb Williams, he's going to have a hell of a year. USC is a threat. USC has entered the chat for me. I got them at 5. Clemson, out of respect, I keep you at number 6. I don't like how Clemson's playing, but Clemson is still winning, and somebody's got to beat the man to be the man, right? So they're still going to be the class of the ACC until proven otherwise. Last year was the down year for the ACC just in general. This year looks like it's probably another down year. We'll see what Florida State and NC State have to say about that, see what Miami has to say about that. Right now, number 6, I got Clemson. Number 7, I'm going to keep Oklahoma, followed by Oklahoma State. Neither one of those teams really is barn burning. And I just got to tell you, after about USC, there's a drop off for me to Clemson at 6. And then after 6, there's another drop off to Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. And then 9 and 10, I mean, I sat here and really tried to think of who I was going to put here at 9 and 10. Some of the names that came up that look like they're going to figure mathematically, Michigan State, Miami, I just don't feel like either one of those two teams are quite there. They're close, but I went with Arkansas and Kentucky. Arkansas, I feel like, has a higher ceiling. I feel like if Arkansas played either Michigan State or Miami, they would win today or tomorrow or next week. I feel like they're stronger. They're strong up front. I like what KJ Jefferson's doing. It's SEC West football. They're built for that, and I feel like they would be able to outlast either one of these teams, Michigan State or Michigan State or Miami in 60 minutes. So I gave that 9 slot to Arkansas and Kentucky. I mean, if Florida's the number 12 team in the country, which they weren't, they were shot up and they were gassed up, but Kentucky went in there and kind of beat them kind of soundly. I mean, they felt like they were in control of that game, and they had a lot of bad breaks, so that could have really been a 3-score win. Impressed with Kentucky, a grinded type team. I think that they would fare really well with anybody outside of the top 10. Top 10 teams would probably give them a little bit of trouble, but outside the top 10, I think Kentucky's going to do pretty well. I think they may be in for another top 10 finish or 10 win season type year. So I went with Kentucky at 10. So that's Georgia, Bama, Michigan, Ohio State, USC, Clemson, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Arkansas, and Kentucky. What did I get wrong there, Mike?
Well, I think my top three would be the same with you. I'm going to say something that might surprise some people. I don't think Michigan is that far off from Alabama for me, because Michigan, if Michigan can show this big playability with the passing game, um, then that takes them a step further if they show it against better competition. Yeah, I know Alabama has a much better win. Texas is really good, but I'm really concerned with these receivers for Alabama. I'm not seeing what I wanted to see out of this game. I want to see more explosive plays, and I think the defenses both are really good, but I don't think Michigan's that far behind. But I'm going to keep Michigan at 3. Year 4, I agree with Ohio State. For now, Ohio State, you're starting to scare me a little bit, just what I'm seeing. And
Mm-hmm.
then for 5 and 6, it's kind of the same what you had. Clemson, I kind of want to see more. That's a team that I feel like if you put a new quarterback in there like Clay Kubnick, maybe something changes with that offense, and that might boost them up in our top 10 when you look at them. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I like all those teams. The only change I would have is I would replace Kentucky, and I would just have Kentucky behind these guys. Is Tennessee? Tennessee would be 10 for me,
Mm-hmm.
because when I see Tennessee play, I look at these teams like, what would happen if these two teams played each other?
And
Well,
they will play. And they
yeah,
will
and
play.
and they will play each other, and they're rivals. So what I see
Mm-hmm.
is Kentucky, if you watch this Florida game, Florida had a guy that just could not get the ball in passes, and really hurt the team passing the wise. Kentucky's really tough to run on, as they showed tonight. They shut
Mm-hmm.
AR down running the ball, but Tennessee is very good at tackling you vertically. I think that offense will be a big problem for them. I think it'd be a really good game, but I like Tennessee just a little bit more right now. I love what Coach
Mm-hmm.
Stoops is doing. I love that guy. Like me and Rico have talked about this many times. If it didn't work out somehow with Norvell, that's the
He'd be the
guy I would.
guy.
That's the
He'd be the
guy I would.
guy.
That's the guy I'd want.
He'd be
He
the
knows
guy.
he
Yep.
knows he coached there at Florida State. He knows them well, but obviously FSU's in a very good place. We're really excited about what we've seen so far there. But for me, Tennessee, I would put in that 10 spot. That's really the only difference. I think everything else, I think we're
Hmm.
on the mark with, but I think it's really close.
And if you see over there, those were the three teams I had vying for that 10th spot over
Hmm.
Kentucky. It was Tennessee, Michigan State, and Miami. And I just felt like this Kentucky team was just more sound,
They
particularly
impressed me a lot.
defensively,
I
than
like them a
those
lot.
three. I feel like Kentucky's a better defensive teteam than any of those three. I feel
That's
like they're
yeah, they
farther
are.
along.
Yeah, they
And
are,
that's why I kept them at 10.
that are, and that's a big deal. The swamp is not an easy place to go into, and they went in there
Hmm.
and they shut Florida. Florida did not score in the second half, so they did a really good job defensively. Kentucky, I just want to see what these DBs do when they face a really good passer. That's what I want to see. So
Yeah.
if they pass that, yeah, they're going to pass Tennessee for me. Once I see that, you're passed. But I think it's really close between those two, and I think Kentucky's a really good pick. I mean, I don't think you can go wrong with either one of them. Wish we could put 10A and 10B. That's how I'd look at it with those two. But
Yeah.
I love both Tennessee, Kentucky. I can't wait to see that game. I'm fired up whenever they play.
That's going to be a good one. I'm looking at some of these games into next week. I think we're going to be at the game of the week, and I know A&M's going to drop in the polls, and they should because that was a flat out
Yeah.
embarrassing loss. I don't have any words for it. I feel for Coach Fisher. Love Coach Fisher, but that's a disappointing loss. There's no way to avoid it. There's no way to put lipstick on that pig. You cannot lose at home
What do you think
to
his
that team.
press What do you think his press conference was like today? Like I haven't even watched it. I'm
Oof.
I can't imagine how viral that was.
Yeah, it probably wasn't too comfortable. I would hate to be asking him questions because he could probably burn your soul with a stare. But looking at these games next week, couple that stick out, we will be at College Station for
Yes.
the A&M game. Miami at A&M, big time nightcap. Hey, we're going to see who's going to be able to reach down and grab them. I mean, either the
Hmm.
Canes going to come in there and they're going to start mattering in college football landscape. And I know some people are going to be real happy if that happens. Or A&M's going to say, hey, last week was a fluke, and Miami go out back down to South Florida with this loss. We're going to see which one of those outcomes happens. Uh, Michigan State at Washington. Want to see that game. That's interesting
Hmm.
to me. Let's see here. Rolling up a good one. Texas Tech at NC State. Watch out for the Red Raiders there. In fact, I'm going to call an upset. Red Raiders over NC State right now. I'll go ahead and put my flag in the ground there on that one. BYU at Oregon, little interesting. Oregon lost their ranking. We'll see what happens there. Penn State at Auburn. I like this. Neither one of these two teams are ranked. Penn State may squeak into the top 25 this week. That's an interesting game. Um, Looking at Oklahoma and Nebraska, we didn't talk about Nebraska because they're not top 25 team and
Oh
they ain't going to
God.
be all year.
Oh
But Scott
God.
Frost, if he makes it to that game, I personally I think Scott Frost should probably be fired at this point because you've had several years and you're losing to Georgia Southern at home. I mean, that's abysmal. They get Oklahoma coming in there. If there's any rallying cry, if there's any hope for Scott Frost, it's this game. It's this game. If there's any hope for him to retain the position as the head coach at the University of Nebraska, where he won a Heisman and won a national title, kind of, um, it's this game. Oklahoma at Nebraska, high noon. They got to have it. Georgia travels to South Carolina.
Sneaky good. I think that's a sneaky good game. I think Georgia will win, but I can sneak it. But also the Texas Tech, they upset Houston today, so that's a big win. They stormed the field. Texas Tech beat Houston, so they knocked
Mm-hmm,
Houston out of that little Cinderella spot. So I agree with the
mm-hmm.
Texas. For me, the Texas Tech game this week coming up is big. That's a game that I got circled. Watch out for Texas Tech. That's a really good team. And then you already mentioned the other ones. I think we have several big ones. I think Nebraska. I mean, as far as that situation,
Yeah,
the dude is 5-22 in one score games.
yeah.
So that
It's not
tells
good
you
enough.
he's not winning when you need him to win. And
Yeah,
sometimes, you know what? Even if you're a Loma school, sometimes you know what? It just ain't gonna work. It
no,
just doesn't work. And I agree with you. I think it's time to, whether it's now or after the season, you already need to have your mind made up that hey, let's start moving with this because this just isn't working. It seems like they're snake bitten with this guy running the program.
Yeah. And there's two other games I'm going to talk about. Um, First one, California at Notre Dame. That is a huge game for Coach Freeman. Um, Notre Dame is reeling. They do not have a quarterback. California's from the Pac-12. They're going to come in there ready to score. Notre Dame really, really, really needs that game. Notre Dame is kicking butt on the recruiting trail. To
Yes.
maintain that, they need this game. That's a
Oh,
big one. And
bad.
there's a big one in the ACC because we're going to see if our Knowles are for real and Louisville cannot afford to go 1-2 and 0-2 in conference play. That's a Friday nighter. Florida State at Louisville in the icy white uniforms. They threw some shade at Louisville. Had a couple Louisville transfers, debut in the uniforms. Made a little music video. Jarvis Brownlee's a corner from Florida State that transferred to Louisville. There's going to be a little bit of bad blood there. I don't think that that's going to be a friendly game. It's going to be some hard hitting there. Louisville beat Florida State last year, got out to a huge lead and hung on. Florida State had a lot of issues and just could not overcome the deficit that they had. Louisville's won twice in a row, including 2 years ago when they beat the Knowles down in
Hmm.
Papa John's, beat them down. So I'll just say it, Frank. Florida State's coming in pissed off. They came in, they disrespected Louisville. They meant to do it. They're coming in pissed off. Louisville's going to have to answer the challenge, and hey, we'll see if they can do it.
Yeah, I think this team for FSU, whether they do it or not, you can see every game they play is like a chip on their shoulder, where they're taking it personal. Where
Mhm.
all these teams that embarrassed them, like Wake Forest, Louisville, I think they want to send a message that, hey, this is a different type of FSU. We're bringing a different breed. We finally got the roster the way we want. They got to come in there. It's a big game. I think it's kind of overblown with the jerseys and stuff, but I think overall they're just coming in there to send a message. They know, and we talked about this before the season started. The schedule sets up really good for FSU. You're playing a Louisville team that just got an emotional win on Friday night or Thursday night, whenever the hell they played, and they have a short week and they have to play FSU. It's a physical game when you go down to the wire like that. And then FSU's had a week and a half off to get their bodies right and get ready. So I think it's certainly an advantage for them. But FSU's got to go bring it and just they got to play the way they keep play like they have the first 2 weeks. And
Mhm.
I just think this team's mindset is different. And I felt that way, Rico, even when we did the breakdown for Duquesne game. I just felt like it was very businesslike. Take care of
Mhm.
business, get the hell out of here, be done with it. And then same thing with LSU. They felt like you felt like they controlled the game. Obviously, it got kind of iffy there at the end because of mistakes, a lot of mistakes in the second half. But I think overall, this team is much more dialed in to what they want to do, and just their approach is different. But they got a big opportunity. Win this game, you're 3-0, and then you got a two game homestand. So certainly, it's a major game for FSU.
Absolutely. And, we will be actually, you'll be coming down to Texas. We're going to catch
Yep.
that game together. And then we're going to be heading off to College Station to see the Canes battle the Aggies. It's going to be a big week, college football. And we're going to have a terrific show after all of that. And then I'm just going to preview you. Week 4 is going to be absolutely insane. I just took a sneak peek there. We'll get into that next week. But holy smokes, we are about to get knee deep into college football season here. Crazy week 2, big upsets. Holy smokes, Notre Dame, and holy smokes, A&M. I mean, you guys knocked the socks off. Biggest takeaway for me is Texas looks like they put the SEC. I noticed that they're
Yes.
not coming there to they're not coming there to play around. They're going to come in there to compete. And yeah, we're going to see.
Yep. As long as they can get there mentally, I think Texas is going to be a major force this year, and even when they get in the SEC, I think that was certainly a big boost for recruiting. I know people are like, "Oh, it's more." No, recruiting. Kids want to see what you're going to be, where the vision is going. When you almost
Mhm.
beat the number one team in the country and came down to a final play, that's big, and you kind of see where this is trending with Texas. So yeah, that was my big takeaway too. I was very impressed. They were so much better than I thought they were.
Yeah. Shout out to Texas. That was a great, great
Yeah.
performance. But that's all we got. We've got the week 2 college football Saturday night review with Mike and Rico. We're going to sign off for now. We look forward to seeing you next week. It's going to be late because it's a night game. We got to get back from College Station. But, hey, we're going to be recording probably side by side, giving it to you next
Yep.
week. So you guys have a great week. Thanks for rocking with us. Mike, thanks as always.
Yep.
And set your fantasy football rosters.